Looking back in your childhood, as a kid, you and your brother would play make-believe in the backyard as any kid would, but you guys didn't pretend to be famous athletes or movie stars. You guys pretend to be referees. Was that because of the influence your dad had on you?
Yeah, there was some of it. Full transparency, Joe Namath was a quarterback in our area when we were little, so I did pretend I was Joe Namath for a little while there, and my brother was Lenny Dawson because he liked the Chiefs when we were little kids in the middle of Pittsburgh. But to tailgate on that, we did play, fantasy football in our backyard, right? My brother and I were the only two brothers to ever work on the same NFL crew together. So that fast forwarded like 30 years to where I do remember vividly being at Lambeau Field and looking down the middle of the field at my older brother and remembering the same time that we were in the backyard pretending that we were different quarterbacks too. So it was really a great moment.
Yeah, and so, reffing with your brother, when Mike Prayer phoned you, told you were going to be an NFL ref, and not only that, but your brother was going to be your back judge first time in the NFL. Yeah. What was your first thoughts going through your head when he told you that?
Pure elation to me personally. And then naturally I would do what any good child did and phone my mother first before my late father at the time to let her know that I was going to become a referee in the NFL. And then also wanted to let her know that my older brother Tony was going to be my back judge. And my mother didn't respond right away. It was a rather quiet moment, and I thought we got disconnected. And I said, "Are you still there, Mom?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm here, honey, but what happens if you have to overturn your brother on TV?" And now, I don't know if you have siblings, but I was in the middle of 7 kids, and my older brother wrestled me on the floor a lot of times, and they locked the door and would let me come in if we were out in the backyard. I said, "What would make you think that I would want to overturn one of my brother's decisions in front of 20 million people?" And he had never been overturned up to that point and had worked a Super Bowl. And I overturned him 2 times the next season too. So there is a little side story to that one, but yeah.
That little bit of that sibling rivalry even on that big of a platform.
I still keep it really respectful as a younger brother and honor him. He's my partner in our business at home as well. So there's a time and a place to let him know that you were the white hat, but I usually kept that to the Sunday afternoons if he wanted to go after me, and I let him know that I was kind of the senior representative at that time.
Yeah, so what is that business you guys run?
We run a business that we started when I was 23 years young. It's a paper janitorial distribution company. So like your trash can liners, the floor wax that you use here at your school, and all those amenities. And then we also sell a lot of solvents to manufacturing industries and things of that nature. So it was something that he and I started doing as really young guys, and it was in 1988. So we are almost in business for almost 40 years now together.
And all right, back to football. When you're reviewing a call, or even as a color analyst, but even as a referee, when you're reviewing a call and the referee realizes, oh, I messed that up. How does that kind of, deflate the mood a little bit for the referee? Is it kind of like, almost you have to have like that goldfish mindset, like forget it, move on to the next play? Yes. But is there ever that moment where that kind of degrades a ref a little bit?
Yeah, I think part of the business, and it's not smoke. It's the presentation of what you're doing and your posturing and how you articulate a foul. Sometimes as a referee, what you say on a microphone can also help the analysts that are calling the game by giving them a piece of information that they may not be aware of and allow them to work there. So there's definitely a bridge there. Yes, you're there to get the plays right, and be a good play caller. But as a referee, you are also a conduit to the general public, to the announcers if you're in a televised situation. And really that would also be something that can convey confidence in the crowd or not confidence in the crowd, right? So that's a very valuable part of being a referee. My first review ever in my life when I was a rookie referee in Chicago in preseason 3, my brother Tony and an umpire by the name of Carl Paganelli that had 5 Super Bowls and was from Chicago ruled on an interception. I had gone through 2 other reviews that after replay review, the ruling on the field stood. So I thought I was already a pretty good veteran at how to do the replay review and my announcements. And I remember coming out of the hood, and it was actually going to be overturned. Waiting for my older brother, because he was the conduit from television, to let me know it was live TV back again. So he'd say 10 seconds out, I went onto the field at Soldier Field. thinking again, subconsciously, I got this all right. I clicked the mic and I said, after review, the ruling is, and I red lighted. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I said, the ruling is not good. And I can hear 80,000 people to this day in Soldier Field half laugh, half jeer. And I understood the magnitude of being prepared to do it the right way, because after I clicked the mic off, that umpire who was from Chicago said, come here, rookie. Everything I do is good, not good. So there's a lot of emphasis in being prepared and prepping for the unexpected.
And you said you prep. What is that prep like? Not only for a ref, but also for the the media side. How do you kind of prepare yourself for a game?
I think what you do, I don't think you want to script it. I think if we do too many things, at least this is how I worked. It's like speaking tonight. I'm not going to write a bunch of stuff down and then speak off a piece of paper. It's not authentic. When you officiate, when you work as an announcer or in live television, you can't script them a lot. Because you don't know really what's going to happen, right? So I think there's something to just be said for your preparation and your knowledge, your understanding, and being able to react in that moment and trusting whatever that presents itself. But that's the level of discomfort that kind of attracts you to doing it. So if you like being in uncomfortable situations, then put yourself in those environments and trust that your preparation, you can't stand in front of the mirror all the time and make announcements and do signals, right? At some point, it has to just happen. And then you have to be a very good self-evaluator, though, and be very critical of yourself in a positive way once you go back and look at it. And that's not just in officiating. That's kind of in life.
Yeah, so you're kind of known as one of the more famous referees and officials. That's because you make some of the most famous calls, including the folded piece of paper call for the 4th down in 2017. And that's kind of the famous one everybody around campus knows about. Can you take us through that moment in that call?
As you said, my father, who has now passed, was a major college football and basketball official for over 30 years. When I was a younger kid, and I played football my whole life from 5th grade on through college, but in the old days, when it was close to a first down, all officials carried a penalty card in their pocket. That's why officiating jerseys have a pocket. No other ref jerseys do, really. I think soccer may, because they bring the yellow card out. But this was a penalty card where you wrote down the captain's names, you wrote down, circled the timeouts. You kept information on that card. And when I was a kid, if it was close to a first down, then the referee would slide his penalty card down the front stake of the line to gain. If that penalty card hit the football, then it was a first down. But if the card went through clean, then it was short. And I was a little bit kind of later in my career and pushing back on all the new fab technology and all of this stuff. So as that play presented itself, I remember seeing Jason Garrett, who was the Cowboys coach at that time, yelling from the sideline that the line to gain pole wasn't straight. And there was a camera out there, and everything was down to these fractions. And one of my officials, who happens to be the umpire who's going to umpire this coming Super Bowl, was my umpire in that game. And he knew I was ornery enough that if he just threw out and said, why don't you use your penalty card like the old guys did, that I might bite on that bait. And he was right. So I reacted to the moment. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize it was going to create maybe the buzz that it's created. But there's always a positive, because now I get free 3x5 index cards from all the office supply companies in America.
Yeah, it's great advertising for the index company.
There you go.
Yeah, but like game of inches for football and stuff like that, using the index card. Why doesn't the NFL use because they're very technological developed, why don't they use like a chip inside the ball?
In the ball itself. It would be great if the ball always dictated where the play ended. So the challenging part of this is that, yes, the ball may have just crossed the goal line there and the beeper went off, let's say, but his knee was down 3 camera frames before the ball broke the line to gain, or the goal line, right? So you would almost have to, and you guys are younger, so you get all that, putting sensors all over your body. I think we ought to just put sensors over all their bodies. And then we can watch them run around, and when something touches, a red light will go off, But I think that's one of the reasons why they haven't done it yet with that. They have used this chip lately, though, and you'll watch now. This might be a little inside baseball or football info. When a punt goes out of bounds, 35 feet in the air, in the old days, The referee would stand by the punter. That official that was downfield would start running up the sideline with his or hand in the air. And when you felt like that's where it crossed the sideline from a half a mile away, you would stop that official, and that's where we used to put the ball, right? So because it's become more exact and technology is growing, they do have an indicator. So there is a sensor at some point on that ball where you'll see an official now look at his or her watch when they get to that area, and it's supposed to collaborate the longitudinal and latitudinal lines of dissection. So they are using it in some ways, but I don't think we can use it with the football because of body parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, with the card and stuff like that, and players hitting their knees on the ground, one of your most famous rules from one of your calls was the Chad Johnson rule. And so can you kind of break us down that play of when Chad Johnson tried to spike the ball at the back of the end zone and it came out?
With Calvin Johnson in Detroit, I did have my career kind of paralleled with what was a catch and what wasn't a catch, almost for my entire years as a referee, a white hat. And you're right in saying, like, one of the biggest ones, the first one was the Calvin Johnson catch when the Lions were hosting the Bears. And he finished what we thought were all the elements of a catch, right, or as viewers. But what's happening in the game, and not just what is or isn't a catch now, but in a lot of different things as we continue to grow technology, is that there has to be a time when it isn't a catch or it is a catch, right? Now, we can sit and watch it in real time and sit here as guys and gals and look and go, no, that's a score, that's a touchdown. I know, but what's the rule? By definition, by frame. So in the eyes of the rule makers and the replay, you have to finish the process of the catch. Back then, if you possessed a football airborne, and when you landed back on the ground, you would just continue to fall. You never really gathered yourself and could be a runner. If you were always falling, then you had to survive the ground if you were falling. And in the Calvin Johnson play, yes, he possessed the ball in the air. He stumbled 2 or 3 steps as he landed in the end zone. He used the football in his arm as like the third leg of a chair, and it hit in the end zone too and didn't move yet. But just as he started to move his hand upward, that ball lost control in his hand. So it was kind of like taking the definition of what was a catch all the way to the last camera frame and then saying, by rule, this isn't a catch now. I will tell you full transparency, when I was under the hood back then, I wasn't a firm person who was agreeing with that initially, but after listening to it, I trusted the people that were in my ear to tell me what that nuance was.
And now that you've met all of these people, growing up, you mentioned Joe Namath and all of these things. You see all these big people that people look up to. Now that you definitely are one, how does that feel? Kind of the full circle moment.
I really have never felt like that, and that's being really honest with you. I was really a lucky kid to go watch Joe Paterno play Bear Bryant when Penn State played Alabama as a kid. I was fortunate enough to stand on the sidelines when I was 7 or 8 years old and see Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell play for Penn State. So we were really lucky as a family to be in an environment where quote unquote recognizable or famous people were in your proximity. We were also blessed to realize that they were people. The platforms or whatever that was that made them famous was just that. They just happened to be really good people that were in front of a camera like we are now, which enhanced their, fame or, recognition. But one thing that my father instilled in me, and I hope worked, and that I've instilled in my own children, was a level of humility and to look at people in a certain way for what they've accomplished and not whether they were famous or recognizable. It's easy to say as older people, and as you guys grow and now are even a little older, it's a better conversation when someone is 10 or 11, right? So we had our own little rules in the home about how we handled all of that. But I think as my children grew, and my youngest child is 35 now, so they have made the full circle. I also think being in that environment around them and understanding they were just people and looking at them for what they were doing or accomplishing made them more confident and more aware as they move through life. And I think that's the real lesson. I appreciate you saying that I might be recognizable a little bit, but I also was a ref. So my goal in life was to be on that stage and, quite frankly, not to be seen, which was a weird dynamic, especially as we go into this generation, right?
Yeah, so as a ref, being young, how do you work up the ranks to end up in the NFL?
You start like you would when you were a player. You start working little youth football or basketball games. I worked both sports. You move into the varsity high school area. They have licenses in each state. You'll go to a local chapter where they discuss the rules and you want to become more interested and learn it. And you start then officiating at that level. And then usually there's a small college conference or two in your geographical region. And most of the small college officials are also working high school athletics. So that's where the fraternity starts to help, where I've got a young kid on my crew. He or she's pretty good. I also work small college football. Ask them if they're interested. That's exactly how it happened for me. So I went from high school to the Ivy Leagues in football, to the Big East in football when it was Big East, when Michael Vick was at Virginia Tech and Miami came back. And then at that point was fortunate enough that the scouting department of the NFL saw me and started to follow me. So a lot of it is kind of like players. Once you get to a certain place, people are scouting you, they're looking, you get an interview, you get an opportunity, and then the rest kind of plays out.
Yeah, so people are talking about you and stuff like that. What makes you stand out amongst all the other refs? Is it just flat out the skill?
It's just not a question I really could answer for you, I think there's a moment in time, and as I continue to help train referees for what they do, it's really good to kind of pull yourself up above the game a little bit if you're a referee. Understanding, as I said earlier, a football game lasts about 3 hours. In a football game, there's about 16 minutes of action that the whole world sees in that 3-hour production. And in that 16 minutes of action, there's an average of a dozen penalties. Those penalties then are broken down to about 15-second intervals where officials should administrate, adjudicate, and announce that penalty in that 15-second window efficiently and make sense. That comes out to about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes of live television time for the entire time that a referee should be seen. How you project yourself in that moment and how you do that. And then maybe there's something little that you do that's not really, but it might be that little piece that is your piece. That's what you have. Those are things that you should never mess up because they are things you control. But it's also that element, I think, that takes place. And then if you do that in a way that causes the general public or television people to say he understands what he's doing in this space, he's very aware of his surroundings, then maybe for a little brief moment, they kind of appreciate you as a referee. And when I say brief moment, I mean like really brief moment, right? Because we don't appreciate officials very much at all. So if there's that little window in there, that's when you can try to win some of that.
With that being said, now that you're on the other side of the referee, being able to, and now that you're, in the media side, being able to, see, getting the view of both worlds, how does that kind of influence you too with just, your outlook on sports?
Yeah. Listen, the one thing I love about sports in every facet, I coached my kids' youth baseball, was an unbelievable, one of the most memorable experiences of my life is being a coach with young kids, right? And then as a player and participating, then as an official, and as you said, now as an analyst in the game, or two of the games that I was really fortunate enough to ref. What you really appreciate, everybody should, is the level of preparation, work, and that competition kind of breeds, right? Elder, your number one nemesis is X, right? If X isn't great, then the Elder X game's not great. You want the X players in your own way to be the best they very much can be. Because in order to beat that team then your team has to be the best it can be. So I think what I love about all of sports, regardless of the roles I've played, is being able to understand that there's a very serious competition that's going to take place between people that have done so much sacrifice and work to get to that space. But they're doing it for one collective reason, right? And that's the game itself. As an official, you got to be the overseer of the integrity of that contest. That was the coolest part about doing it as a ref. And the really cool part about doing it in this platform is that you've now become a TV person, right? So it opens up more opportunities to come to communities, to speak about things like this, and then convey those messages like that. And I think those are the platforms that work. And then, like anything, when you get to the levels I was fortunate enough to get to in these different roles, you realize that everybody that works in their respective positions are like the most elite at what they do. And when you see elite people work and prep and accomplish things, it elevates someone like me who was mediocre to a higher level. And I think that's the beauty of all of it. And that's really what sports should show us. It's more than the win and the loss.
And with being a college basketball referee, doing all the basketball, how does that does any of basketball translate, into football? Is any of it kind of the same way?
Yeah, a lot of it is. And I think they marry each other a little bit. Basketball's a bang-bang game where you're making a lot more split-second decisions in a closer proximity. Football is a game where space is your friend and angles mean a little bit more because of the distancing. But in between those two places, you realize that on a basketball court, one step in a different angle is gigantic. But you also understand in a football game that you have the opportunity to see a play, digest the play before you decide to throw your flag. If it's a block charge in hoops, you got to make the call, like right now. But if it's a holding on a tackle in a football play, on a running play, you get to watch that play unfold. Say, yeah, was he being held? Yeah. Was it really, really big? Not really big. Was the runner near him when that hold occurred? No, it was on the other side of the field. And I don't need to call that penalty right there. It's not that huge, right? Now, if it's a safety foul or things. But yes, they both did marry in different ways for me. And I was, as you can probably tell from the interview, a little bit of a talker, right? Basketball forced you to have to communicate quickly with a basketball coach. I wasn't 30 yards away from a football coach on the sideline, so it helped in my managing people in tense situations and continuing to have a feel for when that needed to stop and the game needed to get back into play. So I think there's a lot of benefit for all athletes and officials to do more than one sport.
So when you're making those bang-bang calls, sometimes you might slip up or something like that. Have you ever made a call that wasn't exactly right and then people really hated you for it and got bad feedback?
Oh, yeah, often. I was a mediocre official that just had a little bit of way to manage the game. So, no, look, it's an imperfect world. If you think that you're going to go out and work a perfect game, if you do, I would tell you to probably retire because you might not repeat that. So there is the element of that I'm going to strive to be perfect, but that doesn't mean that I'm not excellent if I wasn't perfect either. So I think there's a lot of value in the fact that you have to go through making a human error, understanding the ramifications of it, but more than anything, going back and looking at that mistake. And then the number one thing to do as an official and as a person, in my opinion, you always are your biggest critic, right? You never repeat the same mistake. So yeah, did I miss that? Yeah, why did I miss it? Well, your angle was off. You got screened because a player came in front of you. If you would have stepped that way on this type of play, you would have had the angle. I see that now. The next time that shows itself, I know where I need to go. And then quite frankly, there are just plays that happen and just through the fate, you got blocked or screened, or you made the incorrect decision in a heartbeats moment. You have to be able to wash that and move on. And that's easier said than done.
And, in those bang plays, what's kind of running through your head when what do you look for to decide whether, like if it's a bang play, whether it's a catch or not, you know? What are the different indicators that you're looking for?
If it's a catch play, I think the best thing that you can possibly do is, look, it's like when you're playing. When you're a really good player and you hear coaches say it, this rookie came in and he's doing pretty good, but the game hasn't slowed down for him or her yet. You'll hear that phrase a ton when coaches talk. That's not just a cliche, that's reality. When you finally start to get screwed in at what you do in sports, the game does slow down a little bit. The goal at that point then is you've won some time because you're slowing the game down. Now do yourself even a bigger favor because a second or two in real time is a light year. So when I see a play happen, a potential catch, no catch, right? Break down the elements as you're computing all this in rapid fire time. As I tell young officials, hurry up to slow down, okay? Digest what's really fast because it's going to be fast. But use every data point you can in those fractions and slow them down and put them in their digestive points. Catch and no catches are a little easier to do in some ways because there's a little more time to do that. It's bang, bang, pass interference plays. It's their hand fighting, and he does restrict him a little bit. But when did that rise to a level of a foul? If referees worked the game by the letter of the law, they would not be watchable. There would be a penalty every play, because by the letter of the law, there is some restriction. I know, but when is it an advantage, disadvantage? When did it, and you'll hear me say this as an analyst, there's hand fighting there, but no material effect on the play, right? There's not enough restriction to say that this player's action put the other player at a disadvantage. So you're trying to take all of those pieces and then hopefully put it into a judgment area that allows the game to play without being overly officious. And I use cliches when I ref for my crew so they could digest things and make it simpler. And one of those were fish for whales, not for minnows. You know, get the big fish, right? And if I were a police officer, we know if we were driving in a 55 mile per hour speed zone, if you got pulled over and at 57 miles an hour, a policeman said, I'm giving you a ticket because you're going 57, you'd bite your tongue and wouldn't be happy about it, right? Because you know if the speed limit's 55, I got a little window there, right? Maybe 63, I get the ticket. Then ref the same way, right? It is 55. I got you at 57, no flag. 64, flag, right? So I think there's a window in there, and you simplify some stuff if you can.
So, you know, you get a lot of criticism and stuff like that, and reffing a game can be hard. But, you know, as we're high schoolers, we're told, find something that you love. What makes you love reffing a game?
The game, the competition of the game. Watching athletes compete and prepare, and truly, when my playing days ended, I wanted to coach. I liked coaching. I wanted to stay involved in the game. But the best way for me to continue doing what I loved most, which was being an athlete, was officiating. Because the game as an athlete, even as young guys and gals, it's not just you're not just in love with game day. Although game day is the coolest day of the week, right? It always was in my home. We had a special plate. Whoever was in the house that had a game, a band concert, whatever it was, they got the special plate in the morning because it was their game day. You wore your game jersey. You did something, right? Well, I was addicted to game day. That's why I refereed 5 college basketball games a week. And then on my weekend break, worked an NFL football game. I loved game day. But I also understood that what I loved about being an athlete wasn't just the game. It was making sure I had all the other things in my life in a proper perspective. Making sure physically fit, eating right, sleeping right. At that time, keeping my grades where it needed to be. Dealing with a relationship, right? All of those things are what makes you an athlete, not just the game. And becoming a ref allowed me to apply all of the same pieces of what I had. So I got the real joy of starting my athletic career when I was 9, and I finished my athletic career as an athlete at 55. Most players, it ends at 18. I got to do it till I was old.